Okay, hello everyone. This is LT1. We're from AIM MSDS 2024. I am Jed. This is Jem, Osh, and Ian right here. And today we're going to discuss about an ethical case from Princeton University. And it's about an app, Charlie, and it aims to improve the treatment procedures for type 2 diabetes patients. Join us as we embark on a thoughtful discussion about the ethical considerations of it.
The app Charlie uses sensors and social networking to enhance medical care efficiency. After trial runs, they saw improved health compliance overall, but racial minorities didn't see the same benefits. Also, forum discussions often became hostile, labeling each other pseudoscientists. With these initial findings, the benevolence team addressed this by tackling the racial data gap, using NLP for forum behavior, introducing a recommender system, and applying multi armed bandits to refine their model. Post interventions, minority user experience, and the forum atmosphere improved. However, problems arose after revealing their methods to the public. At a conference, the researchers highlighted user satisfaction and health benefits. They also argued that full algorithm transparency wasn't beneficial for common users. They aimed for long term benefits and argued that the users had consented to the experiments as per the fine print.
So I think like the issue with Charlie comes from two main sources. First one is their data was not diverse enough, and so this did have an inequitable effect on the users. This is something that Charlie can definitely improve on, and I don't think there's an ethical issue there. The second is that as Charlie's research team was observing, certain demographics were not properly using the app or had lower compliance. So the proposed solution might be a little bit of an ethical issue, like some sort of like singling out based on some of these demographics, some sort of like racial profiling that a user might need more handholding. This has a benevolent intention, but there is a concern that this would be a form of discrimination.
Right, right. So coming from that, I would have to disagree, I suppose, that it would be a case of discrimination, I guess, given that, I mean, of course, they're taking in cultural factors into account. That's how I would say it, which is why I wouldn't call it discrimination per se. I guess as an example, let's take how you would talk to people colloquially about medical terms. Like this might be a bit of a humorous example, but for example, some doctors when they get the history of a patient, they say, "Oh, are you familiar with diabetes?" And for example, here in the Philippines, they would say, "What's that, doc?" And then the doctor would just switch to a more colloquial term, diabetes, right? And then they would understand, oh, the doctor's talking about diabetes, right? So I guess with that, we can see that there's still a need to fit the cultural context of the people you're working or you're providing healthcare.
Right. I agree with Osh. It has something to do more with the personalization of the app in terms of its users. So it's really important for them to, for that, in order for them to follow Charlie's suggestions as well.
Yeah, because different users have different needs, so it's not like a one size fits all that treatment procedure, right? And it's not gonna be effective for everyone. So I think it's better that they kind of segregate these users who are not receiving the full benefit of this app.
Yeah, because how can you make it How can you make it personalized if you don't segment them in the first place?
So should race be a parameter for personalization?
It's a good question. As I'm thinking about it, is race going to be a parameter out of the gate, or is it more of they get these behaviors and then they group them by culture?
Assuming that there's not a lot of training time, like as soon as a user joins, they have to automatically start to, make an assumption
Right.
which group this person belongs to.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Okay. I just suddenly thought, I guess let's say we do push them for more responsibility, for attention. I'm wondering though, what is the practicality of that? Will that make it more expensive kind of effort? Do we need to set something up to make that more effective? Right? Because we're introducing a lot more human intervention with that singling out. Um, do you think that that is also a practical thing?
So this is gonna be in terms of resources.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Definitely not. It's gonna take a lot. I feel like it's gonna take a lot. It really depends on the company. I mean, it's good that you brought up the company's resources because most of their choices depend on their resources, obviously. But of course, if they have a lot of resources, then why not, right? And
I mean, it's for the it's healthcare. It's important, right?
Yeah.
That they receive the optimal care that they need.
which we have talked about it from.
Well, definitely. There are a lot of AI guides and principles now, and I think a common thread among all of them is transparency in the use of AI, how it's gathering data, what data it's gathering. So I feel like, at least for me, this is very like open and shut that definitely you should be 100% transparent. Obviously, maybe you don't share just the like the secrets of Charlie. I'm sure you got businesses would like to protect that. But in terms of the important things, the functionality, the medical stuff, then they should be transparent about how Charlie works, what they're gathering, and I think this goes back again to our consent thing because they have to know what exactly is being gathered about them, right?
Exactly. Here's a point that good thing you mentioned transparency, right? Here's the question. What if you just place it in a fine print, but it's not explicitly stated? Would you still say it's still transparent?
What do you mean?
It's like you
So
don't
it's like
directly communicate
it's
this.
establishing the metric on how transparent that
Yes.
The legality of fine print is one question, and I think there could be some lawyer who would argue, oh, it's legal, you signed up for it. But whether or not it's ethical, despite being legal, it is another question. Like there's lots of things that are legal but unethical, like cheating on your spouse, right? Like legal but unethical. So I'm not saying the two are equivalent, but
Yeah.
I would say that fine print is a very loophole-ish way
Mm,
to get around ethics. You know.
So like transparency is one thing, but the degree of transparency and communication is another in this case, right?
Yeah.
Well, in fairness, depending on where you go as well, there are laws already on, like the general principle is just proportionality, right? You don't have to gather everything about a person, you just have to gather enough so that it fulfills the point of the app. But I guess the point here ultimately is, I think there's the onus on the app developers to clearly line out what these things they're going to be gathering are and how they're going to be used.
Yeah. Right. So as a healthcare company, of course, they're going to assume that they know better than their consumers. Consumers may have diabetes, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they know deeply about diabetics. So I guess they have that sort of authority towards them that they know what they're doing and they know what features they can implement in the app.
they're the experts, basically.
Exactly. Yes.
And I think when a patient downloads the app, they are implicitly giving their consent. Like, hey, I trust your advice
Exactly.
to the medical provider. And the medical provider also, is always saying to the patient, like, they can opt out.
Uh, at what level though shouldn't the with this one shouldn't there be a level also of consideration of what the users want though? Because we've touched you guys mentioned right. I'm implicitly trusting you, but at the same time, we also want people to like the app in the first place. So, how much do you think of user input they should take in for introducing like quality of life features, things like that?
They definitely should. I mean, if you want to get the usage up and the engagement up in the app, so it has to be enjoyable. I guess the line is drawn is when, too much, autonomy or is given to consumers such that they start to taking the driver's seat
Mm-hmm.
rather than just, they could be a backseat driver and like give advice. For sure, we should listen. But at the end of the day, they're not healthcare providers. So if they're advising things that would actually detract from the core message,
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be irresponsible for the healthcare provider not to step in and intervene and say no.
So this is what we talked about in our previous question
Mhm.
whether or not they should even use MAB in the first place,
So,
right? Because what for me it seems like it's more of comparing research subjects as a means to an end in order to have a more a more accurate algorithm to provide solutions to their patients to the users of the app, right?
So for me, sometimes I believe in the what you said, the end justifies the means, but in this case, we're in the healthcare. We're talking about human lives here. I don't believe that subjecting them to something they don't know about or maybe exploiting their information, right, their data. It's not even ethical at all. Yeah, or their use.
well, for me, definitely. I think just like in general, I always want to know what I'm getting myself into.
Yeah.
You can't have some idea of what you're getting yourself into, especially when joining a clinical trial. Obviously, there's that inherent expectation of they're going to be testing, researching. But definitely every step of the way there should be, as we've already mentioned several times, transparency. Things should be clear from the get go, and as even not just from the start, but also as we're going along, right? Especially with something as sensitive and as important as healthcare.
I think we all agree here.
We don't want to get into something we don't know what.
This case was really more of focusing on issues of transparency and communication. The use of information was at the heart of this case. So this is basically question number 4, actually. It's really just asking, is the user satisfaction enough basis to adjust the app? That's how, I guess going back there, at some level, I would say yes, because you need to have quality of life, make it engaging for people to use, in as much as it's a medical app, you don't want it to be too surgical in its presentation and
You need it to be holistic, right?
exactly, yeah. But again, you have to temper that with the fact that you are a healthcare company, and so whatever features are there are to promote that goal, ideally.
I would definitely say, as we said, transparency. A more accessible way to actually understand the algorithms or how the app works and how recommendations are generated, and always giving because while you can have like high consumer satisfaction, if they don't actually understand the app, that can be gained, right? So it's important that they have better features for users to uncover this information rather than relying on fine print.
Yes, I agree. So apart from transparency, they also should look into, well, of course, what do individuals value in the first place? Um, because because transparency is such an issue. Uh, would would people really rely on the app in the first place, knowing that it was a clinical trial? And so, for me, as I mentioned a while ago, uh, I would rather no, I would rather get a suboptimal option. Given it was in a proper intention, it was a proper intention that they knew it was the best option time. So it's uh giving giving the individual users enough. It's like more of a consent as to whether they would Charlie would nudge them in a certain behavior, or Charlie would provide them options on which is a more optimal, and which data would like more of a number on how optimal that option would be for their health.
So yeah, going back to transparency, that got me actually thinking that whenever you go to a doctor, right, doctor guesses or not guess, diagnose your condition, and the doctors usually take the time to explain why they come up with the diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
So in the same way, the AI should be able to also do that. Mm.
I think I'll open up this one by saying I would prioritize results more than intentions here. So say if I can ultimately design, not saying ends justify the means, right? There's still that level of ethical responsibility. But all I'm saying is that if I have to sort of ignore or not prioritize users' satisfaction at some level and instead prioritize the confidence rate of my AI, then I would definitely prioritize that. As long if my AI can ultimately eventually give advice that is more or less optimal, I would prioritize that over whether or not I had good intentions.
Actually, because we're in the medical field, right?
Mhm.
We want accurate results,
Yeah.
and that's what you need.
All right, so I think, and this is coming from an unbiased point of view, imagining myself as a non-diabetic, I would definitely prioritize results. First, because even if I'm diabetic right now, I don't know the full span of the process I'm getting into to have a better health in the first place. But I also have to make sure that it would be nice to be reassured that what I'm going through is safe. Or it's like safe. I know that this is just a process, and eventually I'll reach to like a good, we are talking about here is a result. So yes, definitely result over.
Well, I mean, it's pretty straightforward in my opinion. If people sign up and they want to be part of that experiment, the experimental part of Charlie, that's on them. And I think that, as long as people sign up for it, they should. Having said that, if Charlie is trying to get enough people to sign up to partake in, when the AI is being experimental and nobody signs up, that's just the cost. And I think innovation needs to slow down. And it always has to slow down with respect to human freedom first and foremost. I think taking the paternalistic approach where, or not paternalistic, utilitarian approach where the ends justify the means, it could actually, like in this case, probably not that much consequence, but as a precedent, it could lead to like a lot of horror scenarios where people take it too far.
Anyone else?
Well,
I kind of more or less agree with that. While innovation is a great thing, of course, not everyone can fully grasp that, I suppose, and especially in the medical field, I think. Would you say actually now that I think about it, would you say that is it more fear than really that would slow innovation down in this case?
Well, no, it's because sometimes people don't want to be part of the control group. They just want to, not or the placebo group. They just want to get the best advice that they can.
Right.
They don't want to be like clinical data, right? They just want advice and they don't want to be part of that. And I think that needs to be respected if they're not signing up for that.
I agree.
Yeah.
right, I guess that's it. Thank you for joining us in our thoughtful discussion for this case. See you again.
Thank you so much. See you in the next one.
Bye.
We end our discussion here with some differing opinions, but generally the same sentiments. Of course, the company knows what they're doing for their users more than the diabetics themselves do, and we can assume that they're consulting with diabetes experts for their implementations. However, the main concern is, regardless of the positive results, will there be a next time that they do a non consensual experiment? And it's not a good prospect to have a means to an end approach every time, especially in this industry. So, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you've learned a lot from this discussion as much as we did. And what an insightful discussion this was. Till next time.